Welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to read you some stories sent in by your fellow listeners about their true and terrifying experiences. Before we begin, how are you this week? Hopefully this can be a little escape from any hectic times or agonizing decisions you need to make. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy. I chose our first listener story, honestly, for the fact that they have a good story, and on top of that, the best name a person could have. Hello, my name is Shelby, and I have been an avid listener for about a year now. This is my one true personal experience with the paranormal, and frankly, I hope I never experience something like this again. Hope you enjoy. Have you ever been half asleep? That period where you're just drifting off, but you're still vaguely aware of your surroundings? Your eyes are heavy, your body is still, and your thoughts weave together and move off just beyond you to form shapes of their own. As both an insomniac and a heavy sleeper, I'm very accustomed to this in-between state of consciousness. If anything happens or if anything is said to me during this state, it wouldn't feel real, like it was a very detailed dream. Anyways, this happened one day when I came home early from work due to a stomach bug. After taking some medicine, I laid down in my bed and attempted to sleep the rest of the day away. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard my bedroom door open. I was living with my parents at the time, so I wasn't alarmed. I also didn't feel like talking, so I stayed still to fool whoever ventured into my room that I was fully asleep and to leave me be. For some reason, the word mom popped into my head. No, not exactly the word itself, but the knowledge. I just knew without looking that this person was Mom. Not so much my mom, but just Mom. I heard faint footsteps enter my bedroom, circle around, and stop at the foot of my bed. Peeking through my heavy eyelids, I could make out a woman in a billowing light brown dress, wearing a white bonnet and a white apron. Her hands were clasped in front of her as she craned her neck to look at me from over my covers. I laid still and squeezed my eyes shut to hide the fact that I wasn't fully asleep. I heard her gentle footsteps leave my bedroom and out into the hardwood floors in the hallway. Satisfied that I was alone, I let my mind go blank and fell completely into sleep. I didn't feel the least bit afraid. After all, in my drowsy mind, that was just Mom. Not necessarily my mom, but just Mom. I woke up some hours later, just when the sun had gone down. I rubbed my eyes and thought back to when my mom walked into my room earlier to check on me. Then my heart dropped. My blood ran cold. The hairs on my arms and the back of my neck stood straight. I stared at my open door, wide-eyed, and thought, that wasn't my mom. Thank you so much, Shelby. Again, great name, just top-notch, and a very scary story. That little moment between being asleep and awake is it's creepy. It's a creepy time, and at least you had a mom checking on you. Maybe it wasn't your mom, but like you said, just Mom. Thank you so much. I thought that story was very spooky. Our next story is from Sarah. Hi, Shelby. I'm sorry I have to have a fangirl moment here. I love you, I love the show, and I sincerely want to thank you for everything you do. Listening to your show truly is like sitting with a friend, and I just want you to know how appreciated you are. Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate when you guys say things like that. It makes me feel really good. Thank you so much. That brightened my day. Okay, on to your story. I have a true story for you, and it is one that I am not usually keen to share. Even if this is something that doesn't make an episode, it is. Spoiler alert. I will be satisfied just in sharing with you. I may have to write this bits at a time. It affects me that much, so I sincerely apologize if my story seems a bit disjointed. About 13 years ago, I was living with a boyfriend in a small town in Central California. During those days, it was rare for anyone to be alone in the house. We also lived with his brother and his brother's girlfriend. We were all in our early 20s, and so constantly had people over. On the night of this incident, however, it just so happened that both boys were working overnight, and my female housemate was visiting her sister. It was just me and their little dog, who I will call Oso. Let me try to describe the layout of the small house. The front of the house was basically one room, with the living room and kitchen being separated by a sort of half wall that went nearly up to the ceiling, but not quite. On this night, it was about 1 a.m. or so, and I was watching TV, with Oso sleeping on the floor near my feet. Suddenly, I thought I heard something, so I muted the TV and stared towards where it'd been coming from. From my spot in the living room, I had a clear view of the sliding glass door that led to the backyard, clear as day. I heard it, this deep, guttural, unearthly growl. If I'm being honest, I don't really even have the words to justify it. Growl hardly describes this awful sound. So low and menacing, I felt it in my chest. I knew that I wasn't crazy, hallucinating, or dreaming either, because Oso was on his feet in a flash, stood stone still with his hackles raised and pointed directly at that glass door. What I clocked immediately was that the auto light didn't turn on. I had just been out there not too long prior having a smoke, so I know the light was working. There was just a flimsy sheet hung up as a curtain, so it's not like the light would have been blocked out or anything. All of these thoughts ran through my head in the course of a nanosecond. When the growling ceased, what came next made me want to vomit. There was a sort of tapping on that goddamn door, like nails, claws. Oso heard it too and started to slowly step towards the sound. I half-heartedly tried to shush him, but I was stunned and immobile. The sound of the tapping had moved to the window above the kitchen sink, and again, Oso had followed the hideous noise. I remember being absolutely paralyzed with fear, like every fucking cell in my body was screaming at me, "You're going to die." It hit me very suddenly that maybe this thing was moving towards me. If it was in the backyard at the kitchen window, all it had to do was go over the wooden fence outside, and it would be at the window on the living room wall to my left. And from there, it would just have to come round the corner to the front of the little house and be at the window directly behind me. Again, all of this was thought of faster than I could blink. Suddenly, I had the ability to move, and without hesitation, I called 911. As soon as the dispatcher picked up, the sounds from the windows stopped. I told the woman on the line I thought someone was trying to get into my house, and although I wholeheartedly believed it was a something, not a someone, what the hell else was I supposed to say? She stayed on the line with me until the cops showed up, which was maybe 5 minutes or so. They searched the backyard. Yes, the light came on then. Searched the house and honestly were kinda dicks about it, acting like I was some scared little girl getting spooked by being alone in the house. Honestly though, I didn't really care. It worked, and whatever had been outside was gone now. I remember calling my mom and telling her what happened, no matter how fucking insane I sounded. As expected, she attributed it to a dog or some asshole kids playing a prank. Well, I decided I was going to do some poking around. Obviously, I hadn't slept since that incident, not until it was light outside. So when I woke up in the early afternoon, I beelined for the side of the house, where the kitchen window is. I knew it wasn't feasible for it to have been any kind of animal, because if you were standing outside, you'd have to be at least 5 feet or more to reach it. I'm 5'3", and I have to stand tiptoed to see into the kitchen. The real kicker here is that if it had been a person or persons out there last night, there would have been hard proof of it. There was a spigot under the window that constantly leaked, so the ground was always muddy. And wouldn't you know it, nothing. Absolutely nothing. No paw print, no shoe prints, no disturbed ground at all. So what the fuck had been here last night? Fast forward a year later, and boyfriend and I were no longer together. I was back living in SoCal with my mom when my aunt asked if I could house sit/dog sit for 2 weeks while she was out of the country. I eagerly agreed and jumped at the chance to have a whole house to myself for a while. Her dog, let's call her Daisy, was much like Oso in that she barked at every freaking little noise. Still, it was good to have another little friend in the house with me. As per my aunt's instructions, Daisy slept in her crate out in the living room, while I took a spare bedroom on the other side of the house. It was yet another late night, around 1 or 2 in the morning, when I heard something that made me want to die. It was that tapping again, like claws on the sliding glass door in the living room. Even from down the hall, I could hear it, and I could hear Daisy going crazy, snarling and growling. She was a loud and yappy dog, but I'd never heard her snarl like that. Just as the year prior, I called 911, and yet again, it immediately ceased. Again, the cops searched the much larger backyard, and again I was treated like an idiot child scared of bumps in the night. And again, I didn't give a damn because it worked. This time, I didn't tell anyone because I know how absolutely insane and ridiculous it sounds. The only thing that solidifies my belief that this really happened twice is the dogs. They heard it too. So I know I'm not crazy. I suppose you can try to explain it away as kids again. But like I said, I was now in SoCal. Friends I knew from before were going to, drive 8 hours to play a prank on me? Doubtful. I think the most chilling and yet cliche part of the whole thing is that both incidents happened around the same time of year, the beginning of October. Now, I'm a fan of spook and horror, but not in my real life, thank you. It's been over 10 years, but I still remember it all so vividly, and I'm very strict about 2 things. Number 1, I do not spend a single night alone in any house during the month of October, and number 2, always have a dog with me. I hope that wasn't too anticlimactic. I know it's not as scary as some others' experiences, but I am so profoundly affected by what happened. I refuse to speak of it after dark. If there's anyone who has any ideas what the hell could have been messing with me like that, I'd love to hear it. I again thank you so much for what you do, Shelby, especially for those of us who do not otherwise have a safe space to share our strange happenings. Thank you so much, Sarah. Before I comment on the story, the substance of the story, I will say, I loved the way you changed both the dogs' names for their anonymity, and I know it's probably so you just won't be as recognized by the people who own those dogs, but I like to, in my brain, think that it's because the dogs are just very litigious and you don't want to be sued by the dogs. So other than that, this is horrifying. I am not laughing at your story, just my dumb little brain thought. Because what is this? Was it some sort of curse following you? I don't want to put stuff in your head. You said it still freaks you out. I'm sorry. But I would love to know, like Sarah said, if you have any ideas what this could be, let us know. I'll read it on the show. I'll give Sarah an update on the show. Because what the heck? Because that is terrifying. I believe you. I believe something happened. What that is, I have no idea. I'm glad you thought you figured out some way to make it go away, though. And I'm glad it hasn't happened for a long time. And I'm glad you put some rules in place for the month of October for yourself. That is very smart. Smarter than people in horror movies. So, good on ya. This next story is from Becky, and I have to say, Becky, this one gave me the chills when I read it. I'm going to be honest. Okay, hi Shelby. My name is Becky. I live near a very large unnamed river in New Brunswick, Canada. I recently found your podcast and have been binging it in my drives to work. Thank you. I love true horror stories. This story is 100% true. I want to tell you about something that I experienced, and fingers crossed it doesn't bring on any new visitors. I have always felt I'm a bit sensitive in the sense that I experience things from time to time. I don't like this because I am 100% a self-declared scaredy cat. I have a coworker who is somewhat of a medium. She told me that the more you think about spirits, the more open you are to attracting them. My story starts on a night in early September in 2023 when I was home alone. Don't they all? My husband was away for the weekend, and I had just gotten our kids to bed and was settled on the couch to catch up on a series I was watching. It was a real tearjerker. My emotions were high, and I had already had a couple good cries with the main character by this time. I was feeling all kinds of sadness and empathy for the girl in the show. I decided to hit pause and go into the kitchen and grab a drink. I opened the refrigerator door, bent over, and grabbed a drink. When I popped back up above the open refrigerator door, I was physically startled and gasped out loud to see a young man standing in my dimly lit dining room next to my dinner table, about 5 feet away from me. As soon as he was there, I gasped and he disappeared. He was there for no more than a millisecond, but I saw him clearly and very detailed. He was only a young man, maybe in his late teens, early 20s. He had wild, dirty blonde hair and was wearing a light tan-colored t-shirt and light-colored jeans. Both were visibly too big for him. I noticed right away he was missing his socks and was standing there in bare feet. After I gasped and he disappeared, I just stood there in shock as to what I saw. I could not wrap my head around what had just happened. Surprisingly for me, I was not scared. I know, right? I was overcome with feelings of sadness, and I felt like he was scared and asking for help. I felt so sad for him. A few days later, I asked my coworker about him, and she was able to do her special thing, and she saw him. She has an amazing gift. She was able to tell me that he had been dead a very long time. She wanted to help him cross over. At first, he refused. He couldn't leave until his body was found. He was able to tell her how he had come to be seen without shoes or socks, as he was involved in some sort of struggle involving water. In the end, he saw his parents, and he went to them, and finally crossed over. I'm still absolutely amazed by this because as soon as she got him to cross over, my friend asked me, "Were you on missing persons websites?" I went cold because I had been, and no one knew this. Weeks earlier, I had felt the need to search some old unsolved cases in my area, but basically took a very brief look, then moved on. I truly feel that the spirit was drawn to me as he picked up on my intent and ability to find him the help he needed, because in the end, he was able to cross over. I also believe the emotions of empathy and sadness I was feeling that night due to the series I was watching drew him in as well. I still feel very much at peace with the idea that I was able to help this poor young man, since he was scared and alone. To this day, I would recognize him if I ever saw a photo of him. The credit goes to my coworker and her amazing ability. I'm happy we were able to help, and I hope he is at peace now. But please, no more visits. Thank you, Shelby. I hope you have a chance to read this and tell it on your show. I am. You are an amazing storyteller, and I look forward to more episodes. Becky. What a beautiful story, Becky. That is truly, again, just awe-inspiring. And yeah, it reminds me of that show Medium that was on, I don't remember when it was on, the aughts with Jennifer Love Hewitt. It reminds me, it's like something that could have been an episode on that show. It's very sweet. Thank you, Becky. And I do hope you get no more visitors, because that is pretty scary. Our next submission is a quick, short but sweet one from Lily. Hi Shelby, I'm Lily. I've been a fan of your show since I was in high school. I'm 20 now. Wow. The show's been around for a while. This is a short story, so I understand if you don't include it, but it gave me the creeps. I'm a nursing assistant in a facility for elderly people, and since I've worked here, there have been a huge number of deaths. I believe the spirits that inhabit the facility pretend to be my wife. We work together, but on nights when I'm on my own, I hear her or see her. One time, it was around 3 a.m., and I was sitting down on a break, and I had my head down. I hear my wife call me 2 times. Babe, babe, I heard her say. So I jolt up and go, huh? After looking around for a bit, I realize she was not here with me that night. I also hear her footsteps. I know exactly what they sound like, only to see nobody walking near me. I've even seen her. On a night when she was home, I was at work, and I kept seeing her walk by in my peripheral vision. I don't know if the spirits like to pretend to be her or what it could be. Anyways, that's all. Thank you for reading. Thank you so much, Lily. That was... I know there are a lot of great, very scary stories from nursing homes or assistant facilities for elderly people, and that is no exception. There's a really good one, a really creepy one on the show Spooked. I couldn't even begin to remember what episode it was. It was a while ago. It was a few years ago. But I remember that one. Oof, that one really got to me. So go find that. And Spooked is a great show. So check that out. This one is from Hannah. Hi, Shelby. First of all, a big thank you for keeping me company on many hours of commuting over the years. I'm a huge fan of your work and love the variety of true horror, dark Reddit, and horror fiction, all read and produced with style and panache. Why, thank you. I think that's the first time anyone's ever said I had panache, so thank you, Hannah. Secondly, I wanted to encourage you to visit Dungeness in Kent, UK, if you ever get the chance. It was mentioned in a recent episode by one of your contributors, and I can attest to its haunting beauty. I recently bought an artwork by a local painter depicting the old and new lighthouses, attached for your viewing pleasure, and I did see that. That is stunning, and I do really, really want to go there. The photo doesn't do it justice, but may give you some hint of what it's like there. As an aside, it's where my partner, Christian, asked me to be his girlfriend almost 5 years ago, so it holds an even dearer place in my heart. That is lovely. I love love. I love love. Thank you for telling me that, because that's so sweet. Anyway, enough rambling. Let me get down to telling you my story. It was 2016. My older sister Beth was turning 40 that year, and as a special treat, I had taken her for a long weekend in Florence, Italy. Arriving by taxi from the airport, we climbed a spiraling stone staircase to our accommodation, a beautifully decorated but very old apartment with whitewashed walls, lots of parquet flooring, and antique wooden furniture throughout. We packed our first afternoon with an exploration of the local area around the apartment, taking selfies outside ornate churches, browsing stalls of religious iconography, and getting our photo taken in a retro photo booth. Later on, we headed out for a delicious dinner at a restaurant recommended by the Airbnb host. That night, we both slept well and woke early the next day, ready for another day of exploring. We climbed to the very top of the dome at the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, the last leg of which was steep and supported only by rope handrails. Beth, being a little afraid of heights, was not sure about getting right to the top, but I was so proud when she made it, and the views were spectacularly worth it. We explored markets, lunched at a wood-paneled restaurant, and took countless photos of the Basilica of Santa Croce. Once the sun had started going down, we headed back to the apartment for a light supper, showered, and got into our pajamas. We were sitting on the couch in the living room, comparing the photos we had taken that day and admiring the leather bags we had purchased from the market, when all of a sudden, the entire couch shunted violently to our left. We sat there looking at each other wide-eyed and shocked. Beth laughed nervously and exclaimed, "What the fuck was that?" I shook my head as if to say, "I don't know, but it scared the living daylights out of me." "Very funny," Beth said, thinking I had moved the couch to freak her out. "It honestly wasn't me," I replied. Being the more pragmatic one, I got up looking for a logical reason for what had just happened. It was an old building, perhaps it was just settling a bit. But when I went to the side table to the left of the couch and tried to replicate the shunt, even using my full strength, I could not shift the couch. We sat in silence for a while, processing what we had just experienced. Beth then remembered a Sanskrit blessing she had recently learned from a friend, and in the absence of any sage for smudging, we wafted a candle around each room in turn, repeating the blessing and telling whatever entity was there that we were not a threat and we would be gone in a couple of days. Despite the apartment having enough bedrooms for us to have one each, we both decided that we would prefer to share a room that night as we were so shaken by the incident. Nothing strange happened in the apartment for the rest of our stay in Florence, but that feeling will always remain with us. I hope you enjoy this tale of the paranormal, Shelby. Best wishes, Hannah. Hannah, I loved that story. I loved every bit of that story, from just the dream vacation and dream apartment to the ghost. What a perfect little story, and that is terrifying. I mean, I always tell people that true experiences are always kind of like this, where there's not much to it. It's just something very strange, and you feel it in your bones. There's this instinctual feeling that like something was not right. But also it's not like the movies where it's long and drawn out. I guess some of them are, but most of the true experiences I've heard that really give me the chills are things like this, and things like the story we had earlier where the young man just appeared for like a millisecond and disappeared. They're inexplicable, but they happened, and they're hard to explain to other people that it happened, and it's hard to explain how real it was. So, thank you again, Hannah. What a great story. And our next story, this is from Haley. Hi, Shelby. Been a listener of yours since 2020. These are two creepy moments that have happened in one of the homes my family and I lived in for a while. Just some background on my family. We are British, but my dad moved a small portion of us to the US for better paying work as an engineer. My mother's side is very open to supernatural things since we had a palm/tea leaf reader in her bloodline. While my dad is more rational and looks at everything with a hint of skepticism, I sit between them. I would need to experience something to be a believer or have evidence in front of me. I added a drawing of the layout for my home to shed some light while telling my stories. The kitchen had a small window and a bar opening to the living room. That will come into play with the first story. My first experience was back in between 2011 to 2013. It's a bit fuzzy on the exact year. I had been up late into the night playing either my GameCube or 3DS when I decided to go grab a snack. I left my room, through the hallway into the kitchen, crossed the kitchen to grab whatever I was in the mood for, and started to head back. While crossing the kitchen, I froze mid-step at the edge of the kitchen opening as I noticed something out of the corner of my eye had kept pace with me. I could never get the image out of my head. It was humanoid, white as paper, completely nude, no hair. I was frozen to the spot, trying to will myself to go around the corner, but was terrified of what I would see. I finally bit my lip and said, "Fuck it," rushing around the corner to find nothing. It freaked me out enough that I bolted to my room and locked the door for the night. The second experience scared me for two reasons. one, I have no clue what it was, and two, I had a family member hear it too. This happened a little after the first scary one. I was up late at night again, reading this time. Insomnia is so fun. Indulging in my favorite pastime when guttural screeching noise made my whole body lock up. It was nothing like the wildlife I had ever heard before. Not a coyote, fox, possum, raccoon, nor frisky cats. I shut my book and muttered, "Nope, time for bed," as I turned off the light and kept an eye on my window until I finally crashed. The next day, I asked my dad if he had heard it too, hoping he would brush it aside with some rational reason, as he would with most things. Instead, he paused and went a little pale. "You heard it too?" I nod, "Yeah, by my window. What about you?" He gave a stern look. "By our bedroom wall. Not sure what the fuck it was, though." We both gave each other nervous looks, then tried to explain it away with shaky laughs as we made funny noises at each other to ease the tension, though we were both spooked for the day. Thank you for reading. I'll ask my mom about the poltergeist they experienced while on a trip in Austria and other creepy moments I had in my first apartment. Keep up the amazing work. Haley. Thank you, Haley. You know, I'm not much of a UFO guy, as in I don't know much about UFOs and aliens because they scare me, but your stories sound like a lot of the alien stories I've read, like even the sound one, plus the humanoid creature, so I don't know. Aliens? ? I'm not sure. Thank you, Haley. And our last story of the evening is quite the doozy. This is from Crichton Clay. This happened to me back in my first year of college, a big change given that I grew up in rural Britain and was now having to live in the busy city of London. For my commute, I would have to catch the subway train from the flat I was sharing to the college site. During the day, this was fine. The only thing I had to fear was getting bumped around by other people. But at night, things got scarier in a different way. If you were traveling alone, you could have an entire subway car to yourself, and late at night, after a day of lectures being drilled into my head, this was the case. It was 9:50, nearly 10, and I had the entire train car to myself as normal. The car started to slow down at this station. I think it was Earl's Court, and this lady dressed in a snow-white wedding gown, complete with veil and flowers, stepped into the car and sat opposite me. In London, you see a lot of strange things, and in truth, this isn't the first runaway bride I've seen on the underground. What did strike me as odd was that it was late at night and she never once stopped looking at her feet. I felt bad. She had probably just had a bad wedding night, so I asked her if she was okay. When she replied, her voice was hoarse, as if she had been screaming her lungs out not a few moments before. She said from under that veil, "I'm fine. Just my husband told me he had spent part of the reception with my best friend and maid of honor." The poor girl broke into tears, but her head never moved. She was wailing and screaming in hysterics, but she sat still as a statue. Now, this didn't last long, perhaps 3 or so minutes. Then she just went back to as she was, staring at her feet. The train had just started moving again at this point, and against my better judgment, I decided to just tough it out until King's Cross, my stop. Just past Green Park, the car began to slow and shudder until it stopped. A man on the intercom announced that there was a problem ahead at the next station. I don't think he knew his intercom was still on, but I heard him mention a jumper before he realized his mistake and turned off the intercom. The statistics of underground jumpers is always something sad, and it reminded me of a friend whom I had lost and how horrible things must be to reach that point. As I was thinking this, the lights in the car began to flicker. and the air got incredibly cold. I could see my breath in front of me and everything. I looked to the girl in the wedding dress, and she was still in the same position, looking down at her feet. I asked if she was okay, if she could feel the cold or if the lights were bothering her, but she just sat there, unresponsive for around 3 minutes. Then she looked up and asked me, "Why did George cheat? Am I not beautiful?" I was left stunned and asked her, "What do you mean?" "Am I not beautiful?" Her voice was getting more aggressive now, so all I could respond was, "I'm sure you are." Now she lifted her veil, and the image still haunts me to this day. Her face was gaunt and sunken, her cheeks and lips had no color, but her eyes were the worst. Her pupils looked as if they had exploded, as if blown up and burned out from the inside. I couldn't help but scream, and I mean, I screamed loud, and while I was screaming, the lights in the car went out, leaving me screaming in the dark. I don't know how long I sat and screamed for. I know my voice hurt from the screaming, so it must have been a good few minutes. The car began to move again, but the lights didn't come back on. When the car hit the next station, Piccadilly, I ran out of that car, away from that girl still sitting motionless, past quite a few work attendants and police officers, up a wrong-way escalator, hopping a turn gate, and I kept running until I found a taxi. It would be great if things ended there, but it didn't. It took a sad turn. One of my flatmates, whom I told the story to, sent me a link a few days later to an article. Turns out a bride had found out her husband had been cheating and jumped onto the underground tracks. She was announced dead on arrival due to the tracks electrocuting her. Of all the strange things that have happened in my life, this is by far one of the strangest, and I thank you for listening. Thank you so much for your story, and I thought that was a great, terrifying way to end the evening. Thank you again to everyone who submitted your stories to the show. If you have a true story you'd like to be considered for the show, please send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. And if you'd like to follow the show on social media, you can follow me at scareyoutosleep on all social places. By the way, a little update. I am less than 100 people away from 10,000 on Instagram. Again, I know it's silly. It's these silly little games we have to play, but I do thoroughly appreciate those of you who heard my little call to action and went and followed the show on Instagram, because it is so very close to hitting 10,000. I really appreciate you so much. And if you'd like to follow me personally, you can follow me at Shelby B. Novak. I post pretty frequently. That's where all the updates for the Bloody Disgusting podcast go. Little clips go out every week. And I post to my stories, just dumb stuff to my stories all the time. Post photos of Clara being silly. And post photos of me every once in a while. So if you'd like to follow me again, that is Shelby B. Novak on Instagram. I'm on the other stuff too, but I mostly stick around Instagram these days. And if you'd like to become a Patreon patron, which I would really appreciate, and you'd like ad-free episodes and bonus episodes, you can follow the show and go subscribe to patreon.com/scareyoutosleep. And I think that's all the things. So thank you again for sticking around. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful for all of you. I hope you know that. I'm very grateful for this show and for all of you tuning in every week. I'm feeling a little emotional this week. I'm going out of town. Also, I needed a little bit of a break. I'm going to see my family for a couple days. And so anyway, I'm just feeling very grateful right now. #blessed. But thank you for sticking around this show. I think, a lot of these stories I got this week mentioned how long you've all been listening to the show. And the show's anniversary is coming up soon. It is on May, I should know this, 3rd? It's May, early May. It's early May, and it's going to be the show's 7th anniversary. That's pretty wild, isn't it? And man, what a ride. What a wild ride. But anyway, I'm not going to stay sappy. For those of you who like to hear about Baking Corner, I'm about to start Baking Corner. And those of you who hate Baking Corner and hate the rambles, I will see you next week. And that is totally fair. And I love you equally. Goodbye. And for those of you who like to stick around, so Baking Corner. This week I made some focaccia for a couple friends of mine who come over weekly to watch TV with me. And I made this recipe that I don't even remember which recipe I made. A pretty basic recipe. There's one recipe I really like because it has you infuse the oil, your olive oil, before you begin the rest of the steps. So I infused my olive oil with garlic, a lot of garlic, red pepper flakes, some Italian seasoning. I didn't have fresh herbs. My herbs that I'm growing are they're baby stages at the moment. And I recently used up most of my basil for something else. So didn't have fresh herbs, but who cares? I got pantry herbs, so I threw some Italian seasoning in there, some cracked fresh pepper, and so I infused my olive oil. I divided the dough into two for its second rise, and then once I did, and this is maybe not allowed in bread making, but I did it anyway, and it turned out really good. So I separated the two to rise for the second rise into 8-inch cake pans. And then once those were done, I added some of that infused olive oil to the top of one, and I sprinkled like Parmesan Asiago, and I had one more cheese that I sprinkled on top, and I can't remember what it was now. And I layered the other half of the dough on top of it, and then I, dimpled it like you're supposed to. Added the rest of the infused olive oil and a little extra. I always add a little extra olive oil to focaccia. I just love it being very crispy around the edges where you can really taste that olive oil taste. So I did that, and then I baked it in one of the 8x8-inch cake pans. And my friends absolutely loved it. It was very good. It was fantastic. It was really good. I recommend doing the layering thing. Again, I don't know if you're supposed to do that with focaccia, but I did. And it was very good. It was very, very good. I don't know. I just kind of thought of it on the fly. I didn't use a recipe for that particular part. And we dipped it in balsamic vinegar, and that was, fantastic. So focaccia is a really easy bread to make too if you're new to bread making. Don't start with sourdough. Start with focaccia. Focaccia is so easy, and it's so impressive because you can add whatever you want to it, whatever flavors. If you want, you can even do it plain. I've done it plain before, so I can kind of work on the dipping or using it as a sandwich bread. So good, even that way. Because again, that really, that great. And use olive oil that has a great taste to it. There's, what is the olive oil? Is it extra? Which, the olive oil that doesn't have a lot of taste, it's for, it'll say it on the bottle. But I like a really robust tasting olive oil. And so I recommend that. Anyway, so that is it for Baking Corner. This weekend, I'll be doing some baking with my mom for Easter, so I will give you updates on that. I'm pretty sure we're making a pina colada cake that I'm very, very excited about. It's this recipe we made years ago, and I remembered it, and I've wanted to remake it ever since, but I never had the recipe, and often we are not together on Easter, and I'm not going to make, it's like a 2-layer, cake, and that's something I just kind of don't make for myself because you can freeze cake slices, but I just don't usually make big cakes for just me. So and a lot of my friends don't like coconut because they're insane. Coconut is one of my favorite flavors, and coconut cake is probably my favorite cake. So this is pina colada though, so it has pineapple. I'm so excited to make this cake again for the first time. Seriously, it's been over a decade since we've made this cake. I'm very, very stoked about it. And earlier I mentioned that the anniversary of the show is coming up. I'm thinking of doing another voicemail episode maybe to, answer a lot of questions for the show, or for about me. That's not proper English, but for about me, for about the show. And so the anonymous question form has been in the show notes this whole time. Recently, though, I couldn't figure out what I had answered on the previous one or not. I just couldn't remember. So I wiped the form. The form is empty of questions. So it is now, if you sent in a question that I haven't answered, then feel free to use that form. It's in the show. Again, it's in the show notes. The show notes, I've been asked this before. It's the little notes that are when you click on the episode and it says like the title of the story and it has links and everything. Those are the show notes. There is a link to be able to ask me questions anonymously on a form. So please feel free to use that. And also the voicemail, of course, is also in the show notes. So feel free to call, leave me a voicemail. If you're international and you aren't able to call that number, I also totally accept if you'd like to email me an MP3. And I know some of you like to stay anonymous. So, I mean, I don't know, create a burner email address. It's not that hard if you'd like to stay anonymous, but still leave a voicemail. So yeah, you can feel free if you're international to leave an MP3 in my email inbox. You can also text that number. And so leave me anonymous questions. Ask me whatever. Seriously, whatever. If I feel uncomfortable with it, I just won't, answer it. But so feel free. Wild West, ask whatever. Leave me voicemails, leave me texts. And what else? There was something else. Oh, we also do that, by the way, on the Bloody Disgusting podcast. We play voicemails every week from our listeners. So if you ever have a question for me about like horror movies, I don't talk about movies on this show much. We mostly talk about, stories and literature and paranormal and stuff. But even if you want to ask some of those, if you want to ask my co-hosts Zena and Keenan as well, you can also go over to that voicemail, which is a different number. That's also in the show notes of the Bloody Disgusting podcast. And we love answering your questions and getting your voicemails over there as well. So plenty of places for me to hear your beautiful voices. And I just wanted to point that out. So yeah, I'll be doing another voicemail episode soon. Next episode, maybe I'll announce it in the beginning for those who don't stick around to listen to this part of the show. Again, no judgment here. Just, I know some people don't. So I will announce that there. But those of you who do listen, you have first dibs on asking questions and leaving voicemails. And yeah, I think I'm also going to go through that NGL app that I've told you all I do sometimes on Instagram. I'll just throw the link up there and people can leave me anonymous I'm not really looking for questions when I do that. I'm mostly looking just for fun comments and things. But sometimes people do ask me questions and I don't really get to answer them. So I'm going to comb through there as well. And if you've asked me questions on there, possibly those will get asked. It's a lot to go through and it's a lot of real disturbing stuff to go through. Some of you are disgusting, not going to lie. But yeah, so we'll do that. And I'm going to go. I've been talking enough, talking your ear off. I hope you have a fantastic weekend and a fantastic week until I see you next. And go drink your water. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.